Welcome to The Best of Our Knowledge, a program focused on education, learning, and research. On this episode, students compete to advance in the FIRST Robotics Competition. Bald eagles have made a comeback in New York's Hudson Valley, and what's in a name? Colleges are changing their designations to universities. These stories and more next on The Best of Our Knowledge. Welcome to The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Lucas Willard. For years, young people have been hearing about the link between emerging technology and their 21st century future. So it's no surprise that robotics is an increasingly popular sport for middle and high schoolers. I recently attended a robotics competition in Albany, New York.
All right, in 3, 2, 1.
The gymnasium at the Albany Academies in New York's capital city is filled with enthusiastic students and supporters for a qualifier for the First Tech Challenge Robotics Competition. Today in Albany, 16 teams are competing. John McNally, an engineering teacher at the Albany Academies, is the qualifying tournament's director.
I would say it's the varsity sport of the mind. FIRST Robotics is a place where teams design and build robots and program them, and they work collaboratively with their teammates in innovative, creative, and problem-solving environments.
The name of the game today is Power Play, presented by Raytheon Technologies. With fans packing the bleachers and balcony, robots using mechanical telescoping arms stack colored cups onto poles of varying height on the gym floor. The fans cheer as the timer counts down and the robots scurry around the 12x12 field. In the last round of the day, an alliance competition involving teams of two, Saratoga County 4-H's RoboVines and Augustine Classical Academy's Hippopotamus captured the finals. Junior Henry Labarge is a member of the victorious RoboVines team.
We're all very excited. It was very drawn out. We went to the very last match we possibly could have, and at first it looked like we were losing, and then at the very end it looked like we won. So it was probably the most exciting it probably could have.
The students competing here must work as a unit in designing, building, and competing with their robot. Labarge says the sport also helps students make new friends, and speaking for himself, come out of their shell.
It creates kids who start off maybe being shy or not really wanting to get into everything, but once you get into it, once you're in it for a few years, you're up there, you're good at presenting, you're good at leading a team and doing all that kind of stuff. Currently, I'm running a couple of different younger programs. When I started off, I barely spoke a sentence every single meeting, and I think that's the best part.
In addition to winning the competition rounds, teams are also presented other judged awards, including the Inspire Award. Winners are chosen by judges as the teams that exemplify the sport, including sharing their experience, know-how, and enthusiasm with other teams. The RoboVines captured first place, an honor that qualifies them for the regional competition in March at Mohawk Valley Community College. Charles Shue, a 10th grader at the Albany Academies, also competes in robotics, but is only volunteering on this day. Like Labarge, he especially loves the social aspects of the sport.
It's all the new people you meet. It's all the teams that you see. I really love the culture of these robotics competitions, because a lot of the teams will just go around and intermingle. We'll share information on our own robots with other teams. We'll help out. We'll get helped out.
Tournament director McNally says it's an honor being part of a sport that provides opportunities to students.
I believe there were friendships made, there were problems solved, there was conflict, there was perseverance, all going on in this gymnasium today. So that's what I'm here for. We do it for the kids.
More than 3,000 FIRST Robotics Competition teams represent 26 countries and regions in a sport that dates to 1992. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Lucas Willard. The bald eagle was wiped out to near extinction by human activity and the harmful effects of the agricultural pesticide DDT in the 20th century. Following Rachel Carson's landmark 1962 book, The Silent Spring, DDT was banned by the federal government 10 years later. In 1973, the Endangered Species Act was signed into law, with bald eagles being one of the first species protected by the legislation. With native populations having been decimated in New York, the state's Bald Eagle Restoration Project was established in 1976, with the goal of bringing the national bird back to the Empire State. Over a 13-year period, 198 nesting bald eagles collected mostly from Alaska were transported and released in New York. The project came to an end in 1989 after 10 breeding pairs were recorded. By 2010, the state recorded 173 breeding pairs, and that number continues to grow. Today, bald eagles have a conservation status of least concern on the National Endangered Species List, but remain threatened in New York. New York's Hudson Valley is a great place to catch a glimpse of visiting bald eagles during the winter months. One celebration, the Teatown Hudson River EagleFest, is being held the first weekend of February at Croton Point Park, about an hour north of New York City. To learn more about the festival and the Eagles, I spoke with Teatown Executive Director Kevin Carter.
Being right on the Hudson River, eagle spotting in the wild is really great there, and so that's one of the reasons why we're excited after 2 years of hybrid events following the pandemic, that we're really excited about going back in person to Croton Point Park, and where we expect 3,000 to 5,000 people to come out and participate in the event.
What about the Hudson River Valley is attractive to eagles, particularly in the winter months?
No, that's a great question. So, they love to eat fish. That's their preferred diet. And we do have the overwintering eagles are really what we are featuring most at EagleFest. The story of how these animals are coming south from Nova Scotia, from Newfoundland, and it's because of the abundance of fish. And actually, when there's ice on the Hudson River, the eagle spotting is at its peak. And that obviously is dependent on the weather year to year. But you'll always see some eagles. If the ice is there, the hunting is even more improved, because then they have these platforms from which to hunt the Hudson River. And you can see them just sitting on the ice floes in the river. But you can also see them circling the park. They are in search of fish, and they want the most advantageous conditions to hunt fish. But we also have a year-round nesting pair of eagles in Croton, and that's pretty special, because that gives local birders and school children participating in Teatown programs the opportunity to spot an eagle any time of the year.
I know the eagles have been rebounding since the ban of DDT in 1972. So although eagle populations have been recovering for the last half century, what are the threats that still remain today in affecting eagle populations?
So the same things that were that have always been hunting, illegal hunting of birds of prey. The bald eagle has the highest level of protection of any bird of prey. It's a felony but that doesn't keep people from shooting them. Collisions with automobiles is still a real problem. Not as much with eagles, because they tend to be hunting near water, but certainly with lots of other birds of prey. Red-tailed hawks are the most abundant bird of prey in Westchester and the lower Hudson Valley, and you'll see them regularly if you're along the Taconic Parkway or the Sawmill Parkway. They're feeding on the carrion and the other dead animals, including deer, and so car collisions are still a big threat. Lead poisoning, and usually the lead poisoning comes from eating the carrion of another animal that's got lead shot in it. So those are three really common perils. Still, habitat is always there, and when we're developing areas, it's one of the reasons why it's important that we continue to protect and be vigilant about protecting wetlands and forests that are really key, both nesting and feeding areas, habitat that the birds need. So the DDT, as you mentioned rightfully, was probably the biggest culprit and needed to be eliminated. And it took time because, of course, once you have the policy change to take it out of production, that doesn't mean you've taken it out of the environment. So it took some time to really see the benefits of that. But awareness is really key. We don't want people to think that EagleFest is about people coming out and just being hammered with or bombarded with the science. But yes, we do want them to learn something. We want them to have fun and to learn something at the same time.
So EagleFest had to take a virtual course during the last couple of years due to the pandemic, but with the event's return, what opportunity then does that create in turning on new people into conservation or just getting children and adults interested in ecosystems in general, that something that can't happen over the computer screen necessarily?
Yeah, well, you said it. I mean, we did do it. We, like a lot of other nonprofit organizations and educational organizations, it was, we did virtual programs and hybrid EagleFest really just because we didn't want no EagleFest. So we our staff were very creative. They rose to the challenge, and we did some live stream things with birders around the region so people could still have those experiences, but knowing well and that an in-person, that experiential learning, that hands-on learning, that people being together as a community, that cannot be truly replicated in an online experience, in my opinion, because the impact is so much more magnified when you see people having an up-close encounter. They can be within a few feet of these birds of prey, and you just see what happens if you watch people, the awe and the excitement. One of the things that I do in my role is I serve as sort of the MC in the main bird show tent, and it never fails. The moment that a birder takes out a golden eagle, a bald eagle, barred owl, there's just this hush, like ooh and ah, that happens when they see the bird. It's for most people, it's not an experience that they have every day, and it brings them closer to the animal. And I actually believe is really key in developing empathy for what these animals go through to survive. And also reminding people that they're here, they're right in our backyards. Sometimes there's this thought that these animals are so exotic and I can't see them, but hopefully what we're doing is illuminating the fact that when we protect open spaces and we protect the habitat that these animals need, we're helping them to thrive. And then that leads to a larger discussion about biodiversity and why biodiversity is important. It's not just important so a scientist can give a dissertation. It's important because biodiversity equates with resiliency. And now more than ever, as people are confronting the reality of climate change and we're feeling the impacts of it now, they've arrived, it's more critical than ever that we share this understanding that if we're not thinking about biodiversity and we're not thinking about that human populations are a part of a natural system, our nature and our systems are going to become less resilient. The world we live in has become less resilient. So that's a really big part of it too. And that's the best description I can give. But anybody that comes to EagleFest, come to one of the shows in the main tent, and you'll see exactly what I mean when one of these birds comes out. And they'll walk up and down the aisles, and so people can get close. They'll ask that people, stay in their seats and that they'll be respectful and not, make loud noises that could alarm the birds. But they're going to get to have this close encounter and hear directly from people who have dedicated their lives to not only caring for the birds and advocating for them, but also educating. So they're coming from far and wide to do this, and that's one of the reasons why I think partnership is critical. We do have birds of prey at Teatown that we use in our programs year-round for children, for school groups, for adults, but we don't have nearly enough people or birds to really do an event like this on our own. So it would only be possible by teaming up with people from all over the region, and they seem to love it. I mean, as soon as we let people know that EagleFest 2023 was going to be back in person at Croton Point Park, people were, how can I help? What can I do to participate? So you're going to have an opportunity to meet with lots of other organizations that are doing critical work, Sustainable Westchester, all helping hopefully to pass on, practical knowledge that people can use in their lives to protect ecosystems and biodiversity.
Kevin Carter is the executive director of Teatown, a nonprofit nature preserve and education center in the lower Hudson Valley. There's more information on the Hudson River EagleFest at teatown.org. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. On Martin Luther King Day Jr. weekend in January, Siena College in Loudonville, New York, hosted more than 100 middle and high school students for the 19th annual Students Together Opposing Prejudice Conference. For 19 years, the STOP Conference has brought together students and educators to bring attention to the issues of bias, bullying, and prejudice. The Best of Our Knowledge's Jody Cowan attended the 2023 STOP Conference on January 13th and brings us this report.
More than 100 middle and high school students from 11 school districts in upstate New York gathered for the 19th annual STOP Conference at Siena College. The event, hosted in partnership with the Anti-Defamation League's A World of Difference Institute, features workshops, discussions, and action planning in honor of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The theme of this year's concert was music, with programming exploring the power of music as resistance during the Civil Rights Movement and how this legacy continues today. Beth Martinez, the New York State Capitol Education Director for the ADL, explains.
So we decided that the theme would be freedom dreaming, past, present, and future. So looking at how freedom songs originated, the progression over time, how the message has changed maybe or not changed, but progressed and differentiated over time, and then asking the students, how much more is there to still be done, and what does that mean to you? Like, what does freedom mean to you? What does that look like, and how can we as change makers allow that to happen?
These students from New York's capital region are engaged in the ADL's No Place for Hate Equitable School Climate Program. Martinez says the initiative fosters conversations about fighting hate and building allyship.
They do at least 3 activities throughout the school year that are focused on fighting bias and hate. So they're action planning how they can bring these concepts they learned today back to their school and incorporate that into either like a lesson plan or a huge group activity, some way to be able to share with the rest of their school what they learned and implement that within their school buildings. Students learn so much from each other, and they are the future. So the more that we can help them have those tools to be able to help be the change makers, I think the more hope we have for our future.
During the day of activities, students had an opportunity to share their own stories. Senior Patricia Burchett and freshman Bella Varghese, both students from the private Doane Stewart School in Rensselaer, read poems that spoke to their experience as young women of color. The students told The Best of Our Knowledge it was an encouraging experience to share their voices and engage openly with other students in the workshop. In this interview, Burchett speaks first.
It was super awesome. Everyone here, all the students are very receptive, so it just was so empowering to be able to speak.
It felt really good because I think we need to know what different people in our age group are thinking because we are the future, especially since I'm Indian, so Asian Americans are often underrepresented. So part of me wants to really bring attention to that.
There's definitely a lot of racism and segregation still, but it's not always seen, and we really need to improve that. We had a lot of conversation. Towards the beginning of the program, we ended up separating off into like our breakout rooms, and we had really interesting conversations just about like everything, how everything plays a part into our schools, how we can stop hate within our schools.
We talked also a lot about our identity and how what we feel and the way we identify with things, how that impacts our day-to-day lives, and what we should do to make our identities known and what we should do to help those problems that surround them.
The students were also visited by one of New York's top elected officials, Democratic Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, who was the STOP conference's keynote speaker. Delgado, a former two-term member of Congress, spoke about his past as an independent writer and hip-hop performer, echoing the theme of using art as a building block to the movement of resistance and inclusion.
What inspired me to get involved in hip-hop music was not what you hear on commercial radio stations or commercial TV programming. What inspired me was understanding where it came from and the history of the culture. And it is a culture with principles, peace, love, unity, and having fun. A culture that came from a community that was being overlooked and undervalued and unseen. You go back to the history of the culture, you had the break dancers on street corners, on cardboard boxes. You have big boom boxes and fat shoelaces and big medallions, very colorful. Why? Graffiti all over subway stations. Why? To be seen, to be heard, to be understood. The music, while not political in its intent, was nonetheless a political statement. It was meant to draw attention to a community that had been overlooked. And now look where that culture is. And you can debate about all the different elements of it, but there's no doubt that it defines much of what's culturally relevant, not just here in America, but around the world. And it started from communities that were overlooked. There's a lot of power in that. You go back to the civil rights movement, and you think about We Shall Overcome. You think about legendary artists like Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come, Mahalia Jackson singing at the March on Washington. There's always been a thread with music and its capacity to inspire folks to do the impossible, to overcome.
After Delgado's speech, students broke into small groups. Face-to-face, they brainstormed ways to bring the ideas and talking points formed at the conference back to their respective schools. The Anti-Defamation League's Martinez applauded the students' passion and hard work on display at the conference.
The goal of today is to enable students to be able to continue to be the change makers in their school. So giving them the tools, giving them some resources, giving them some courage to be able to think about what that means to them, and then sending them out back to their school districts to make that change happen.
Martinez says nearly 300 schools are currently enrolled in the ADL's No Place for Hate program. The program is grant supported, so any school can enroll.
We as education staff help them throughout the year with their activities, but it's school-led and student-led. So it's a wonderful program to involve the students in making the change at their school.
From Loudonville, New York, I'm Jody Cowan for the Best of Our Knowledge.
What's in a name? And what's really the difference between a college and a university? After a change in New York State's definition, several colleges across the state have been rebranding as universities. The Best of Our Knowledge's Dave Lucas reports.
SUNY New Paltz president Dr. Darrell Wheeler says about a year ago the state university system officially altered the designation of university,
making it possible for historically the comprehensive colleges like SUNY New Paltz and Oswego to apply to have their name changed from State University College at New Paltz to university instead of college. This designation acknowledges from the state system that you don't have to offer advanced PhDs or doctorate degrees to achieve what the state has considered what the state classifies as university status.
Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities President Lola Brabham praised the New York State Board of Regents for updating the definition.
CICU has advocated for years on behalf of more than 100 private, not-for-profit institutions of higher education across the state to make this critical change. Removing this barrier will ensure that colleges in New York can market themselves to prospective students at home and abroad in a manner that reflects the depth and breadth of their academic offering.
Most people haven't noticed because the word university already appears in the SUNY acronym. Wheeler says there were no major celebrations of the new title on the New Paltz campus.
The New York designation shift was one of the last amongst all university systems in the United States to our state education systems permitting the use of university for master's granting institutions. So it actually, if anything, we're kind of lagging behind the rest of the country in making this particular move.
So what does the change in designation actually mean for these schools going forward? Brabham says it improves their ability to attract new students.
And just to give you an example, there are many areas outside of the U.S. where the term college is really the equivalent of high school. And this can cause misunderstandings about an institution's academic offering. So this just makes it more clear. What it does for schools in the state of New York, it keeps us competitive with other states. And of course, and it increases our ability to really recruit in a way that reflects what our schools are able to offer.
The university tag may also be a boost for students looking to get into grad school. The designation comes as new SUNY Chancellor John King begins his tenure. He spoke on WAMC's Capital Connection program with Alan Shartok.
We are providing at SUNY incredibly affordable, very high-quality education, and SUNY should be mentioned in the same breath as UC Berkeley or University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We should have that kind of national reputation. Some of our campuses are very well known, but others less so. So we have work to do to make sure all New Yorkers see that there's a place for them at SUNY.
Reporting for the best of our knowledge, I'm Dave Lucas.
This has been The Best of Our Knowledge, episode 1688. The Best of Our Knowledge is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio. Thanks to associate producer Jody Cowan, our executive producer is Dr. Alan Shartok. To hear past episodes, visit our flagship station's website at WAMC.org. And until next time, I'm Lucas Willard.